right, so it's official. Jim Harbaugh and Michigan have been punished for this whole sign stealing scandal and all that. And I think the punishment kind of makes sense and it's kind of fair. So if you didn't know, Jim Harbaugh has gotten suspended for the last 3 games of the regular season where he can't be at the game. He can coach throughout the week, but when it's game time, he is not allowed to be there. And that's because over the past month or so, Michigan has been accused of stealing signs. And I remember when this story first came to light, I personally didn't give it too much mind. Because me personally, I'm like, sign stealing happens. Oh, wow, that's gonna be a hard word for me to say this entire video. Sign stealing happens a lot. At every level of football, I believe there's some sort of sign stealing. Whether it's since you played this team last year, you can look over the film, see what signals they use for this, and that, and then you kind of know what's happening. Or even just naturally over the course of a game, a defense just picks up on stuff. I played college football. That stuff happened to my team this past year, and I didn't think nothing of it. That's why you can't be too predictable with what you call it, and you have to mix it up. But I didn't think much of it. Then once more and more information started to release, like you saw the pictures of that Michigan staffer, I forget his name, I think it's like Connor or something, on the sideline of games, with the team's hat and everything. Like the Central Michigan one where he was at the Central Michigan and Michigan State game and had the Central Michigan hat on. That part was crazy. And also hearing that they apparently had members of their staff, they paid for them to get tickets to not only Big Ten opponents, but opponents around like the nation, like other playoff contenders. That to me was wild. I'm like, wow, they really trying to get the upper hand. And you know what they say, if you ain't cheating, you don't really care. And so that was crazy to me. Like, and I am going to say, I do believe that this is something that does happen. I do believe there are teams out there that steal signs. But I think the fact that Michigan was this loud, proud, and bold about it is the most troublesome part. There is no doubt in my mind that you don't have scouts at games. But the fact that they had scouts at games on the sideline where they could be spotted by a camera is extremely ballsy. And kudos to Michigan for thinking they could get away with that. And they almost did. They almost had us. And before I really get into the meat and potatoes of this stuff, I do have to remind y'all, even though I am an Ohio State fan, I am looking at this pretty objectively. I do love my Buckeyes, but I don't really hate Michigan. I just rather not lose to them. So I'm okay with admitting the things they do wrong or the things they do right and whatnot. And honestly, I still don't see it as that big of a deal, because to me personally, even if someone else has your signs, you should definitely have some way to combat that. We live in the era of football now where there's options and tags on everything. You can change every play. There's an option to go somewhere else, RPOs, all that type of stuff. And am I one of those people that think the sign stealing thing heavily affected last year's game between Ohio State and Michigan? To an extent, yes. I think that did affect the game, but I don't think it affected that much of the outcome. Because especially if you look back at that game, they were just a more physical team for a good portion of the game. And even though you could tell that they kind of knew some of the plays, I saw like some video where Ohio State was calling a play. Dude on the Michigan sideline called it out exactly what was going to run. And yes, that will give the other team, that will heavily favor the other team. But Ohio State was also dealing with a ton of injuries. They had no running backs healthy. And Michigan just had their number for the past 2 years. So it happens. So I don't think that was as big of a deal when it comes to like that game in general or that many other games. I don't think it changes the tide that much. Like, I don't think if you have a team at the bottom of the conference go around and steal signals, they will somehow be a team that you now find in the conference championship. That's not how it works. I think it's just it gives you a higher chance of winning. I don't think it gives you an automatic win, if you understand what I'm saying. But let's get into this suspension and why I think it's going to be very impactful in Michigan's season. I'm not really going to talk much about the Penn State game, given I'm probably going to post this around the time the Penn State game starts, because I think it's a big noon kickoff. It probably is, because Fox has all the Big Ten games. I should probably know that, because I'm definitely going to watch that game. I have a Saturday free, y'all. It's crazy. But I think this is going to impact the rest of Michigan season, and it could be for better or for worse. It could be for better because just more motivation. Now, every coach tries to convince their team everybody's against you. Everything's built for you to fail. How will you respond? In Michigan's case, they could legitimately tell the players, yeah, no one wants us to win. Everybody lying on us, everybody rooting on our downfall, and that could give a team extra motivation to go out there and prove everybody wrong. Everybody wrong. And that could propel them these next 3 games when you have 2 of the biggest games of your season coming up. Or it could also hurt your team where it's another distraction that you don't need, especially for a Michigan team that's entering its toughest stretch of the season. Michigan has not played anybody. They really have not. They haven't played anybody to really give them a test. And now this week you have Penn State. You have some game in between. I honestly don't know who they play. That's bad journalism work by me. But then you have your Super Bowl, which is home against Ohio State. It helps that game's at home, but not having Jim Harbaugh for that game is going to be big. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole how I think that game's going to go down because 1, we have 2 weeks till that game, and 2, I am going to talk about that game at length. So I don't want to, talk too much about it now, so I have nothing to talk about later. But not having him in that game is important. And let's say I'm not going to say they win or lose this Penn State game because I don't want to be wrong. But let's say they beat Penn State, they beat whoever they play next week, and then you play Ohio State, an evenly matched team, and not having Jim Harbaugh there is part of the reason why you lose. Let's just say your clock management isn't as good, your decision-making as a coaching staff isn't the best because you don't have head honcho there. And let's say they lose that game to Ohio State. That could potentially be the end to Michigan's entire season because college football this year is very competitive. And I know we saw last year Ohio State go undefeated up until that Michigan game, lose, and be in the college football playoff. But this year, there's a world where that doesn't happen, where a one-loss non-champion doesn't get in. Because let me paint this picture. Let's say Georgia, Alabama went out. Alabama beats Georgia in that SEC championship game, which is a very likely scenario. That's not just a crazy thing to say. Alabama's looking a lot better, and Georgia's not looking like world beaters. They're still looking good, but they're not the dominant team we've seen these past 2 years. But let's say that happens. So Alabama, one-loss champion, beats Georgia, which means Georgia's now a one-loss non-championship champion, but they went to their conference championship. And then Florida State wins out. Ohio State wins out. Then you have Oregon and Washington win out, meet in the Pac-12 championship, and Oregon wins. Now you have a one-loss Washington and a one-loss Oregon who won their conference championship. So by my estimate, that's 3 guarantees right there. And that's not even adding in what's going to happen in the Big 12. What if Texas wins out completely and wins the Big 12 championship? They're likely in. So that leaves Michigan in a place where you don't control your destiny. You don't control what happens to you. And not having a coach is huge. And that could be something that happens now that you don't have Jim Harbaugh. You don't have head honcho in the room. And I know they missed Jim Harbaugh earlier this season, but that doesn't matter. You were playing UNLV. You were playing East Carolina. You could win those games with no coaching, basically. I'm just joking. I'm just being facetious. They probably could, though. I'm not going to lie to you because the team is just that good. But coaching matters, especially when you meet teams that have the same amount of talent you do. I'm not saying this Michigan coaching staff is not good, but like I said, missing head honcho means you have other people doing jobs they don't normally do. They have more responsibilities. It's easy to mess up, especially in a big game when you have more responsibilities than usual. That's something that could happen this week against Penn State and in 2 weeks even though you're at home against Ohio State. Now, lucky for Michigan is it's just a regular season. Just the regular season. That means if they make it to the Big Ten championship game and further, they're going to have they do. But for now, I think that's something that could really affect the outcome of their season. And honestly, I hope it doesn't because then you get everybody making excuses for Michigan, which I don't think should happen because they did what they did. You did the crime you served the time. I rhymed. Bars. But yeah, I think this is going to be very interesting. And just to see how Michigan season plays out now. Should be fun to watch. Should be very fun to watch. So, thank you for watching and getting to this point in the video. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and tell a friend to tell a friend. In the comments down below, tell me what you think about Michigan. Do you think they're just going to win out regardless of having Jim Harbaugh there or not? Or do you think it's going to be tougher than it would have been before since they don't have, like I said, head honcho? But, in the meantime, I'm going to see y'all later. I'm going to be a lot more consistent. I promise you that. I know I said that last time, but this time I actually mean it. I love y'all. Peace. Why do I